The famous San Antonio missions are located in San Antonio, the second largest city in Texas in the south-central region of the United States. It is located about 80 miles west of Houston and 80 miles south of Austin. The Spanish missions are some of the oldest Catholic churches in the United States, and you would think you were in Spain versus 5 miles from downtown San Antonio. The best way to reach the Spanish missions is by car, as each one is 1 to 3 miles from each other, and each mission has a convenient free parking lot. However, if you are active and want to make a full day adventure of each mission, you can also hike or bike between each one.
So where we are today is the San Antonio missions. So the San Antonio missions are a must-see when you're here in San Antonio. So what they basically are is a series of basically ranches and churches that were developed by the Spanish Empire in the 18th century. So in the mid-1700s about, Spain was coming in to the southwest, Texas, which was considered at the time New Spain, right? So basically, the Spanish crown was interested in colonizing the area and also Christianizing the indigenous population, so the Native American Indians, right? Apaches were big over here, so that's the one tribe. So basically, there's a series of these kind of monasteries, right? So it's grounds, and they all have a wall to protect them, and it's usually centered by a church, and you can see the whole grounds. It's really cool. It's one of the oldest things to see here in Texas, and it is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So it's a very important piece of world history, American history, and Texas history. So what we're going to do is show you all of the missions, okay? The first place I recommend you start is here, and this is the Visitor Center. So at the Visitor Center, you can kind of get acquainted with where you are, what everything is. There's a small museum we're going to show you. It's real small. It takes maybe 5-10 minutes. And you kind of learn about the area, learn about each mission, and then you drive between each one. You could also walk or bike. Walking would take a very long time because it is a large area. Biking would be cool, and you can definitely go between each one. There is a trail, or you can drive. Each one has a parking lot, and each one is accessible by car. The first one that we're going to see is Mission San Juan, and that one is directly adjacent to the Visitor Center, and that's kind of right in the middle of the entire National Historic Park. So let's start, guys. Now, where we're standing within San Jose right now is the central field, right? So this is basically the place where they worked, where they tended the livestock, where they farmed, right? So within this field, the Franciscan priests and monks lived amongst the Indians, and there they taught them the Spanish lifestyle, the Spanish Catholic religion, basically converted them. So it was a mixed community of both Southern Europeans and the indigenous population. So where we are now, this field basically was where people spent most of their times. And if you can see this kind of squared ring around me, this is where most of the people lived. So these were basically residences. And then it was all centered around the main church, which we're going to see now. So it's pretty interesting. It's kind of like a compound, right? And it's defended by walls from other Native American tribes around the area, right? So what's so interesting to me is that it's a blending of cultures that are learning from each other, and it's a colonization of a new area, New Spain, which eventually became Mexico and Texas, right? Started here. This was kind of the beginning of the New Spain movement, the Catholicism in this part of what is now the United States. So let's take a look. So where we are now is Mission Espada. Now, Mission Espada is the southernmost mission in the missionary park, right? So if you're coming from the south, this may be a good one to start at if you don't want to start at the visitor center and the museum and all of that. This one is smaller and older than the Mission San Jose. Now, it's a similar kind of setup and a similar story. So this mission was set up by Franciscan monks. So there's actually a friary here next to the church. This center, basically green, is similar to San Jose in that it was a place where the cattle worked. This is where they had prayers, they had hymns, and they basically learned European farming techniques. The Spanish taught that to the indigenous populations. So if you could imagine, 300 years ago, there were a bunch of people and monks working the land and learning the Spanish way, to become viable citizens to the Spanish crown. So there's also a church here, and there's a graveyard in this one. So let's take a look. Thing to note about all of the missions is that the churches in each mission have active masses, and they're active churches, so they're Catholic. So if you want to go to a Catholic mass while you're here and kind of be inspired and being a really cool architectural setting, this is the place to go. I would look online before you come and see when the masses are. There's usually a Saturday evening mass and a Sunday morning mass, so check that out if you're interested when you're here. So even though we're here in San Antonio in January, and let me tell you, come in January because it's beautiful, it's 70 degrees, sunny, amazing. Most of the time it's much hotter than this, right? So it was of vital importance to get fresh and consistent water to the missions. So what the missions did was in 1740, there was an aqueduct constructed that brought water from the San Antonio River into all of the missions. And what it did was it provided water for drinking, bathing, crops, the livestock. So in 1965, the Espada Aqueduct was deemed a national landmark. So it's pretty cool to see. Unfortunately, this specific day, they are doing heavy work on the aqueduct. I'm going to show you some videos of it, but when you come, hopefully this will be over and you can kind of like walk on it, and it's cool to see. So take a look. Where we are now is Mission San Juan. So Mission San Juan is important because this was kind of a hub of commerce in the area. So a lot of goods, livestock, merchant goods, things of that nature were unpacked from Mexico City here to be distributed throughout New Spain, right? So this center courtyard served much like the other ones where they herded the cattle and people lived. But interestingly, this one served as a kind of a commercial marketplace. So if you can imagine, you know, as much as 200 people lived here, right? 200 people lived here, and thousands came here to trade and unpack goods in this very courtyard. And in the far section to the north, where the Indians lived. So the Indians kind of lived in sort of like tents, right, before apartments were made for them later in the early 19th century. If you look behind me, this area where the Franciscan monks lived, and then to the left here is the church. And the church, they actually used it for multiple reasons. It was to store goods and for religious purposes. The monks lived over here. This was the central courtyard, and then over there was where the Indians lived, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go through all of this again, and we're going to show you the church, which all these churches are active, like I mentioned before, and the Franciscan monks' quarters, and just the grounds. So let's take a look. Right now we are at the fourth and final mission, and this is Mission Concepcion. So this is one of the must-dos if you're gonna do the mission trail, as it is called, right? This is like the best one, right? This one has the grandest and largest church. It has beautiful grounds, and it's the closest to downtown San Antonio. So if you don't want to see everything, this one is the northernmost and the closest. So I recommend, if you just want to get a taste of it, you really want to see Mission Concepcion and Mission San Jose, which was the first one we saw. The church is from the mid-1700s. It is beautiful. It looks like something right out of Spain. And similar to the other ones, it has a similar history. It was built to convert the native people to Catholicism, and it served as a little village and was pretty self-sufficient. So let's take a look at the inside. So there you have it, guys. Those are the San Antonio missions. If you're interested in history, Texan history, Southwest history, history of the Catholic Church, history of Spain in the United States, this is the place to go. Now, if you're in San Antonio, the big thing is the Riverwalk, the downtown, and the Alamo. And the Alamo is actually a missionary as well. But I really recommend coming and taking a look at the missions when you're here in San Antonio. It takes a couple hours, depending on how deep you look at it. I'd say it could take anywhere between 2 and 3 hours. You can walk it. I wouldn't recommend that unless you're an avid walker, because it would take all day. A lot of people bike it, which is definitely interesting because there's a trail that goes. I drove it. It's the most efficient way, and you can do it fastest that way. Okay, guys, if you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe, like this video, share this video. Let me know in the comments below your tips and tricks for navigating all of the missions around San Antonio. And check out the link below for a lot of cool stuff about the missions in San Antonio in general. Okay, guys, until next time, take care.